What's up? We're doing some tranny stuff today, cause looky what I got. In this video, we're gonna install a torque converter, and I'm gonna show you how to properly do that. I'm also gonna walk you through some of the upgrades that we did specifically for my situation here. Now, as I do with a lot of my videos, I'll put some timestamps down below in the description, so if you're ready just to skip to a certain part of this video, go ahead and click on those down there and it'll take you right to it. So having owned a few different GM vehicles with the 4L60E in them over the years, I've actually blown a couple of those up. In fact, they call them the 4L Slippy because they tend to have problems with the sun gear and the planetary gears. Being as how I'm building this engine to be pushing 500 horsepower with the turbo and everything, I wanted something beefy. So I got this big old beefy boy 4L80E from a guy here in Oregon who just builds these transmissions. And transmissions is one of those things that I want to put it in there one time and never have to think about it. But since I'm doing a turbo on this car, I also went with this custom built torque converter that I got off Ryan Jans on Facebook. He does Florida torque converters, and you talk to him on the phone, tell him what you're doing, and he'll build your torque converter just for you. So this is a rebuilt torque converter exactly for my situation here with old Grampy, because if you've seen any of my other videos, you probably heard me talking about going on road trips with this car. I want to do some drag racing. I just want it to be a fun, smoke the tires, smoke some Mustangs, possibly pulling a trailer at some point. So in my situation, what Ryan recommended was going with a 3400 stall. I've seen some other people running 2600, 2800, even down to like 2400 stalls. But you want that spool up for that turbo to engage, and especially if I'm going to be towing anything with it. And with this amount of horsepower and this rear end and all of that stuff. So if you pull your transmission from a parts yard or got it off somebody that they pulled it out of a parts car, chances are it's probably going to have the transmission mount, the dipstick, the wiring bracket. But since I got mine from a guy that built it, it didn't have any of that stuff on it. And so I bought this dipstick off of Jegs, and it's specific for the 4L80E. The 4L60E dipsticks are not the same. I thought about modifying my 4L60E dipstick, and there's ways that you can do that. You just got to make sure you got the right length and everything. But it wasn't that expensive, and for me it was worth it just to buy one that was for this particular transmission. And I found the shift cable bracket on eBay, and I'll put the part number and everything down in the description. This is one that is an actual GM part. So I want to keep it real. And then for the transmission mount, I actually upgraded from the factory rubber one to this energy suspension polyurethane transmission mount, just because there's going to be a lot of torque and a lot of horsepower twisting things around, and I just want to make sure that this thing stays where it's supposed to be. And now a major upgrade that I made is for the cooler lines. This transmission comes with a factory cooler that uses these push lock deals that's got a keeper pin on it, and they work just fine. But I didn't want to run the hard lines. I wanted to run the AN braided lines just to keep things kind of where I want them to go and route them differently, because this is not going in a stock car. All these part numbers are going to be down in the description with some links and stuff. So if you go ahead and click on those down there and it'll take you right to it. So before we install the torque converter, we want to rub some tranny fluid on these splines here, and there's a little O-ring here. You also want to rub some on the rubber part of the seal. And then we're going to put a couple of quarts into this torque converter to sort of prime the torque converter, so to speak, so that when we add fluid to the transmission, it's not running everything dry and then sucking all that fluid because you have to fill up the torque converter. Now, if you go online and you look for how to install a torque converter in this transmission, the typical response is you want to hear 3 clicks. While that is pretty common, sometimes you only hear 2 clicks. You're trying to get it over this first set of splines, and then over that little O-ring and onto the second set of splines, and then through the rubber seal, there's a pump that has to engage. That pump gear in there has 2 little flat tabs on it, and as you can see here on the torque converter, these slots right here, that's what goes into that pump gear, which engages your pump. So you want to make sure that that's the final click that's fully engaged. And if that pump doesn't engage fully, you're going to burn up your transmission, and you'll be basically buying a whole new one at that point. There we go. So as you're putting pressure on it, you're also going to spin it and listen for those clunks. There we go. Another one. There we go. There's another one. Kind of lift and push and turn all at the same time. feel back behind here, the gap needs to go in a bit more. Oh yeah, that's all the way in. Again, you may or may not hear all 3 clunks. I only heard 2, that's okay. The main thing that you wanna do though is measure from a straight line here to where these tabs are, and it's gotta be an inch. If it's less than an inch, you're not all the way in. So I put this flat chunk of metal here going from the tangs on the transmission housing itself, and as you can see, we're actually a little over an inch, and it's the same thing on both sides. So that is fully seated. So now the only other thing to do if this thing is going to be sitting for a little while, and it's actually a good thing to do whether it's sitting or not, is to put a strap across the front so that the torque converter doesn't slide out. I got this strap at Lowe's. It was actually in the building materials section. It's a 24-inch strap, and you can see here's the part number. You want to try to find the same one. And I only had to modify it slightly. I had to waller out this hole right here. It's so close if I line up this hole. It's almost close to be perfect. And then I found these hood bumpers in my bucket of bolts that came off the parts car, and these are exactly 1 inch. So I drilled out a couple of these nail holes and tapped it so these can be threaded in there. Again, we'll always check it once we install the transmission in the car. But that's gonna have to wait for another episode. So if this helped you out at all, make sure you give it a big old thumbs up, share it with your friends, comment, and hit that subscribe button down there. It doesn't cost you anything, it's free, it does nothing to you, but it does help me out a lot. So go ahead and hit that button down there. Check out the social medias here. Get yourself a t-shirt. Over here, I got a couple new designs, so check those out, and I'll see you on the next one.